All right, for the first part of notes 48, I'm going to do question number 1, which is linear inequalities with two variables. There is another video on this from a prior note sheet, but let's go through and do these again. So we're going to start by graphing the boundary line. So the boundary line for these inequalities is going to be basically just take the inequality out and make an equation. All right, so we're going to go to -4 on the y-axis. And then I'm going to use my slope. This is 6 over 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. Super steep line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. Again, super steep line. All right. Now, back to the inequality part, we're going to figure out, is our inequality line going to, or boundary line here, going to be dotted or solid? Okay, and as a reminder, if you are looking at an inequality that is greater than or less than, that is going, whoops, not what I wanted to hit. That's going to be a dotted boundary line. If your inequality is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, that's going to be a solid boundary line. So if we look at our inequality here, right, this is strictly greater than, so it's going to be a dotted boundary line. All right, so dotted line here. And when I actually, whoops, not trying to grab different colors. When I actually do this boundary line, then I am going to truly dot or dash it out, whichever word you want to use. All right, but make it obvious. Okay, so we've got the boundary line in place, and now we've got to figure out, are we shading? All right, and are we shading above our boundary line, or are we shading, whoops, write the word below, below our boundary line? So this boundary line is getting super steep here. So if we look at the boundary line here, okay, and we can draw arrows above it, okay, that's going to be above, okay, and if we look at the boundary line here and we draw the arrows under it, right, that's the below part. So which one is which? As a reminder, if you are looking to shade above your boundary line, you're looking for the inequality to be greater than or equal to. If we're looking for below, it's going to be less than or equal to. So for this particular inequality, we're going greater than. So that's going to be above our boundary line. So pick your color of choice and shade, shade, shade above the boundary line. All right, so that's question number 1, part A. Let's move on down to part B here. We're going to do the exact same thing, right? Start with the boundary line. Y equals 4/3 x minus 2. So down to -2. On the y-axis, slope is 4/3, so up 4, 1, 2, 3 to the right. Up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 to the right. I've run out of graph. This particular boundary line for our inequality, I want to try and grab a shading. There's my highlighter. The inequality here is less than or equal to. So that means our boundary line is going to be solid. So when I go ahead and graph this, I'm actually going to just draw a normal solid line through there. All right, arrows at the end because it does keep going. And for our shading, the inequality is, whoops, I'm not trying to write with that. There we go. The inequality is less than, so we want to shade below our boundary line. So we have this boundary line and we want to shade underneath it. So I'm going to grab my highlighter here. I'll go with green this time. Shade, shade, shade. So what's happening here is your boundary line is an answer. That's the equal to part. And every point on this side of your coordinate grid is also going to be a true statement or a true answer for this inequality. All right, one more here for the video. Y is greater than X. That boundary line leaves a lot to be desired. So y is equal to x. Well, we're missing our y-intercept, which means we need to add a 0. And then for your slope, you'd have a slope of 1 over 1. All right. So x by itself, you have a 1x, and adding 0, right? Adding 0 here changes nothing. So now we've got enough information to actually go do our graph. So let's see what we got here. So we're going to start at the origin. And I'm just going to use up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. All right, here's all my little dotted line or dotted points. Okay, so the boundary line here is absolutely going to be dashed or dotted. Yeah, I can say the right word there. And I actually already have a bunch of dots there. So that'll work. So dotted lines. There we go. And we want to figure out, are we shading above or below? So greater than here means we want to shade, actually write the word shade here. So shade above. Okay, so from your boundary line here, we want to shade above that. So let me grab a highlighter. We'll go orange this time to go with the boundary line. So there is the shading above it. Now, in this case, your boundary line being dotted means that it is not a solution. So these specific points on the boundary line don't work, but any and every point right above the boundary line does work. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the video here. I will do a separate video for the rest of this note sheet. But as always, if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. And other than that, I will see you in the next one.